It was a warm summer evening in the small town of Elridge, Ohio, July 1996. The kind of night where the breeze carries the scent of cut grass and the hum of cicadas blankets everything in a quiet hush. The night seemed ordinary, but what began as a normal summer evening would soon unravel into a mystery that would haunt a community for nearly 3 decades. Her name was Melissa Dorsey, 17 years old, a high school senior, responsible, bright, trustworthy, the kind of girl who got straight A's, volunteered at the animal shelter, and never missed a shift at her part-time job at the local diner. That night, she was babysitting 8-year-old Emily Carter. Emily was a curious, bubbly child with a habit of asking 1,000 questions and carrying her crayons everywhere she went. Her parents were attending a fundraiser just 2 blocks away and left her in Melissa's care. At exactly 7:32 p.m., the Carters said goodbye. Melissa waved from the couch. Emily sat on the living room floor, coloring. That was the last time anyone saw Melissa Dorsey. When the Carters returned home just after 10 p.m., everything looked normal. The front door was unlocked. The TV was still on. Emily was fast asleep on the couch, a coloring book open beside her. But Melissa? Gone. No note, no sign of struggle. Her purse was still on the kitchen counter. Her shoes were by the door. Her car remained parked in the driveway. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. Police were called immediately. Officers combed through the home. No fingerprints other than the family's and Melissa's. No signs of forced entry. No one had seen anything. No surveillance footage, no helpful neighbors. Just questions. Emily told investigators that Melissa had gotten up to get her a glass of water. She heard the fridge open. Then, nothing. She didn't remember falling asleep. The next few weeks were chaos. Flyers with Melissa's face were posted across town. Candlelight vigils, community searches, a hotline set up for tips. But nothing came, not a trace, not a single credible lead. The media caught hold of the story. Teen babysitter disappears while child sleeps in same room. It was the kind of headline that gripped a nation, and then was forgotten when the next big story broke. Months passed, then years. The case grew cold. Emily grew up with the mystery haunting her every birthday, every family dinner, every quiet moment. She never forgot Melissa. By the time she graduated college, Emily Carter had become a teacher. Still in Elridge, still wondering, still waiting. And then, something happened. In the spring of 2023, while cleaning out an old supply closet in her classroom, Emily stumbled upon a plastic storage bin labeled art supplies. Inside, dried up glue sticks, worn paintbrushes, and several battered crayon boxes. One box caught her eye. It was old, faded red, the cardboard soft with age. MD. Her stomach dropped. She opened the box. Inside was a silver heart-shaped locket. Emily's hands shook. She knew that locket. It was Melissa's. She had worn it every day. A tiny engraving on the back read, "Forever watching." Inside the locket were 2 tiny photos, one of Melissa and one of Emily as a child. Emily gasped. She dropped the box. She contacted the police immediately. Forensics were brought in. The locket was tested. It was real. Melissa's fingerprints were still on it. But that wasn't all. Trapped in the hinge of the locket were tiny red fibers. Forensics identified them as old carpet threads, industrial, low pile, the kind used in public schools. And with that, the case was reopened. Detectives tracked the box's origin. The classroom had been used for early childhood education back in the late 90s. And one name appeared on the janitorial records for that summer. Frank Dalton. A quiet man, mid-40s at the time, a fill-in custodian, no criminal record. But when they searched his old home, they found something. Journal entries, dozens of them, some rambling, some incoherent. But one page stood out. In shaky handwriting, it read, "She screamed once. Then I stuffed the necklace in her crayon box." Melissa had been there. In that school, the locket. The drawing Emily had made as a child. the subconscious memory she'd buried. It had all been real. Melissa hadn't run away. She hadn't left the house willingly. She'd been taken, hidden, silenced. And Frank Dalton? He died in 2011. A heart attack. No autopsy, no questions asked. But the questions had just begun. And this was only the beginning. When news of the locket broke, the community was stunned. Local papers ran headlines like, "The Locket That Spoke," and "Lost Girl's Secret Found in Crayons." It reignited something in Elridge, a sense of unfinished business, of collective guilt. People who had been silent for decades started talking. One of them was Sharon Kinley. She lived just 3 houses down from the old school where Dalton worked. She said, "I remember seeing a girl go into the back entrance one night, around the time Melissa disappeared. I thought she was his niece." That statement changed everything. Investigators followed the lead. They pulled security records, old maintenance logs, anything they could find. And then they discovered it. A damaged incident report, dated July 12, 1996, the same night Melissa vanished. It mentioned a broken light fixture in storage room 2B and a strange odor. The note ended with a chilling line, "Dalton notified." For nearly 3 decades, room 2B had been sealed, but now they opened it. But there was something else. A second DNA profile. It wasn't Dalton's. And this changed everything again. The FBI took over. Suddenly, the case wasn't just about a missing babysitter. It was about something bigger, broader, more dangerous. Who was the second person? Was Dalton working alone? Or had someone helped him? Whispers began to circulate through Elridge. Rumors about another staff member. A substitute teacher who left town suddenly. A coach who never returned after summer break. A vice principal who never answered questions from the press. Everyone was a suspect. And Emily? She wasn't just the girl who had been babysat that night. She was now the voice of the investigation. She began a podcast, The Locket, a weekly deep dive into the case, interviewing former teachers, classmates, investigators, and even retired journalists. The world listened. Episode 1, The Night Melissa Vanished. Episode 2, Who was Frank Dalton? Episode 3, The Second DNA. And then, Episode 4.
Just translated it. Wyatt, Roger, and why Dalton Dudley is dominant, right?
The tip spoilings from later. Arston's something tipping. A setting Poltus to a pool of practice games. And Arston's son had a lit styes with the bombling policy, but then talking to funders down the Melissa. Emily received an anonymous tip. A letter. No return address. Inside, a single Polaroid photo. It showed a teenage girl smiling, standing in front of what looked like a rural school. She looked just like Melissa, but older. On the back of the photo, written in blue ink, were 5 words. She was never yours to bury. The handwriting didn't match Dalton's. Theories exploded. Had Melissa survived? Had she escaped? Was someone hiding her? Or had someone taken her in and kept her silent? The FBI analyzed the photo. It was genuine, undated. But the camera model matched one sold in the late 90s. No fingerprints, no traceable origin. But the story refused to die. Emily's podcast reached millions. Reddit sleuths constructed entire maps of the town. Theories were proposed, deepfakes debunked, Timelines rebuilt minute by minute. And then, another letter came. This one contained only a key and a post-it note that said, "Storage, room 2B, underneath." Police returned to the school. Under the floorboards of storage room 2B, they found a locked box, rusted, heavy. Inside, Melissa's old co-workers came forward. Some remembered his odd behavior, his late hours, how he always volunteered to clean the early childhood wing, even when it wasn't his assigned section. One teacher recalled he'd hum to himself. Always the same lullaby, gave me chills. Others said he had a thing about children's artwork, saved drawings that weren't his to keep. One woman remembered him taking a crayon picture off a classroom wall, folding it and tucking it into his jacket. Back then, no one asked questions, but now, everyone wanted answers. The FBI reopened the case. Search warrants were issued, old evidence pulled from dusty boxes. And then, a brick, a partial print, recovered from the inside lid of the crayon box. It wasn't Melissa's, and it wasn't Emily's. A match was found in a sealed juvenile file. A student, male, 12 years old in 1996. A boy who had frequent behavioral outbursts, who'd been suspended for bringing a small knife to school, who'd disappeared from the district records the following year. His name was redacted in the report, but he'd lived in the same neighborhood as the Carters, and he'd been in Emily's class. Emily didn't remember him at first, but when shown an old class photo, her eyes filled with tears. "I remember now," she whispered. "He drew monsters, ones that looked like people." The FBI found him 2 states away, living under a new name, quiet life, no arrests. But when questioned, he asked only one thing: did she finally show up? When asked who she was, he wouldn't say another word. And then came the crawl space. The crawl space beneath storage room 2B was only discovered by accident. It started with a tip. A high school student volunteering at the school stumbled across an old maintenance blueprint tucked behind a filing cabinet. On the blueprint, a hand-drawn addition, a hollow space marked behind the east wall. Investigators returned to the school. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed it. There was a room behind the room. They broke through the drywall, and what they found stopped them cold. It wasn't just a crawl space. It was a containment area. 4 feet high, 10 feet long, carpeted in the same red industrial thread found on Melissa's locket. One single broken chair sat in the center, a child's blanket in the corner, and scratched into the concrete wall, faint but readable, "I tried to scream." It was followed by a name: Melissa. Investigators stood in silence. DNA tests confirmed what they already feared. Traces of blood matched Melissa, and buried beneath the carpet padding, her missing earring. The case was now classified as homicide, but still, he didn't argue, but he looked disappointed. That was the day after Melissa disappeared, and as more teachers came forward, a pattern began to emerge. People remembered Dalton being close to someone, not just working alone. A man. No one could remember his name, but one person remembered his laugh. He had this awful, breathy laugh, like he was always choking on it. That detail struck a chord, because in one of Dalton's recovered journal entries, he had drawn a crude smiley face, and next to it, he had written, "He laughs like a rat." Who was he? Who else knew? Who else helped? The search for the man with the laugh began immediately. Police ran old employment records, substitute teacher lists, contractor logs, Anything that could place another adult male near the school during the summer of 1996. And then one name appeared. Harold Munro, a part-time electrician, hired on a short-term contract that July to fix faulty wiring on the school's east wing, just steps from room 2B. No criminal record, no online footprint, nothing since 2004. But one thing stood out. He had listed Frank Dalton as a personal reference on his job application. The two men had known each other. They'd worked together before, at an apartment complex 3 towns over in 1992. There had been rumors back then, a missing tenant, a dog that refused to go near the maintenance shed, but nothing was ever proven. When authorities tracked Munro's last address, it was abandoned. Mail stacked inside the door, utilities disconnected, dust on every surface. And in the basement, something chilling. An old cassette recorder, plugged in, powered. But what it played was worse than anyone imagined. A girl's voice, faint, shaky. "If you're hearing this, I didn't get out." Then silence, then footsteps, heavy breathing, a laugh, raspy, breathy, exactly as described. The audio was analyzed, cleaned, confirmed. It was Melissa. Experts believed she had somehow managed to record part of her captivity. Maybe while left alone. Maybe she thought someone would find it. She left a message, and it took 27 years to be heard. The tape was sent to Quantico. Forensics confirmed the voice was 100% a match to Melissa Dorsey's known recordings. Even with the static and damage, the patterns of speech, tone, and inflection, they were hers. But even more unsettling, in the background of the recording, right after the laugh, a second voice. Barely audible. "Put it back." Was he talking to Melissa about the locket? Was he referencing the crayon box? No one knew for sure, but the theory emerged fast. Melissa had tried to hide something. Evidence. A clue. The locket? A note. And this man, Harold Munro, had caught her and told her to put it back. Whatever it was, it stayed hidden for 27 years, until Emily opened that crayon box. The timing was no coincidence. The audio was released to the public, a 3-minute segment broadcast nationwide. It ignited everything. Social media exploded. Hashtags trended for days. Justice for Melissa, the crayon box. Old classmates came forward. Some remembered Munro vaguely, as a man who watched too much, always in the background, never speaking, but always present. One former student recalled dropping his lunch tray. Munro picked it up. "He smiled at me," he said, but the smile never touched his eyes. And then, a breakthrough. A local real estate company contacted authorities. They had recently cleared out a foreclosure property in rural Pennsylvania, a cabin. Inside, dozens of VHS tapes, all unlabeled. One tape showed footage from 1996, a classroom. The camera was shaky, like it was hidden. And then, Melissa, sitting at a desk, writing, alone. The timestamp read July 10th, 1996, 2 days before she vanished. The tape abruptly cut to static, and then another clip. Dark hallway, screaming. Police are still reviewing the footage, but one thing is now certain. This was never just a disappearance. This was documented, planned, controlled. The cabin had been left undisturbed for over a decade. No utilities, no furniture, just a mattress, a broken chair, and those tapes. The FBI found more than just surveillance footage. Inside a false wall, they discovered a journal, weathered, molded, but still legible in parts. The entries were disturbing. Rambling thoughts, drawings, names, including Melissa's. But on the final page, written in smeared black ink, "I didn't take her. I watched him do it." Signed only, H.M. Harold Munro hadn't acted alone. He was a participant, a witness, a keeper of secrets. But who was him? Who was the master behind it all? Another search began, this time for connections, phone records, utility bills, any name tied to both Munro and Dalton. And that's when they found it. A P.O. box registered to a shell company, set up in 1995. The name on the application? George A. Dorsey. A background presence, hiding in plain sight. Emily was notified. She broke down. She remembered him vaguely. A quiet man, always smelled like gasoline, always wore gloves, even in the summer. He had been at her birthday party 2 weeks before Melissa vanished. The FBI issued a warrant, but when they arrived at his address in upstate New York, he was gone. Neighbors hadn't seen him in weeks. Mail untouched, lawn overgrown. Inside his house, they found a storage room, and on the walls, drawings, hundreds of them. Crayons, messy, childlike, disturbing. Each page showed the same thing. A girl trapped in a box, watching. Always watching. Absolutely, here's the final stretch of the voiceover, bringing the story to a powerful, haunting close. The discovery of George Dorsey's hideout shattered the final illusion. This wasn't just a random abduction. It wasn't just a man acting alone in the shadows. This was planned, coordinated, covered. 3 men, 3 roles. Dalton, the executioner. Munro, the watcher. Dorsey, the architect. And Melissa? She had been the target all along. Theories emerged. Was she going to expose something? Did she see something she shouldn't have? One final discovery gave a chilling answer. In a sealed envelope, hidden behind a floorboard in George Dorsey's basement, was a letter, addressed not to Melissa, but to Emily. It read, "She was a mistake. You were the goal, but she got in the way. I've watched you grow. You're just like her. One day, you'll open the last box." It was signed with a symbol, a heart, split in 2. And just like that, the case took on new life. It wasn't over. It was never over. Emily moved out of Elridge, quietly. No forwarding address. She stopped posting. The podcast ended. Her final episode simply said, "If you hear this, stay curious, but don't go looking. Some answers were never meant to be found." The school was demolished in the summer of 2025. Room 2B, gone. The crawl space, buried. But the story? The story still lives. Every year, on July 12th, a candle is lit outside the town library. No name, no photo, just a locket, placed in silence. A silver heart, closed, untouched, etched with the words, "Forever watching."